resources will have to be mobilized only through taxes. I do remember some 2 years back, when Mukherjee presented his budget, there was an observation by Sitaram Yechuri. It also got publicity. And Sitaram Yechuri, despite of being associated with the political party, has some knowledge of the Indian situation. He calculated virtually with the facts and figures that if taxes are being collected sincerely and seriously, whole deficit in the budget can be met. So if the present government, with the kind of majority that it has and the solidarity that it has, right, succeeds in mobilizing resources by collecting taxes earnestly, you can reasonably hope that the deficit may be confined to a little more than 4.1%. It cannot be 4.1% as such. He has spoken about it. Well, failure of rains, Iraq war, all these are there. As Professor Paranjape said, at least he has some commitment in certain respects. We don't know whether he will succeed. One thing, first time expenditure commission being constituted. Good. Because in one of the budget speeches, Chidambaram said that fiscal consolidation can be attained not only by raising revenue but also by cutting unnecessary expenditure. There is a commission, we can hope that something will be done even in regard to rationalizing the subsidies as promptly mentioned by the minister in his budget. Tax administration is also getting attention. To that extent, again, a step is being initiated by him to mobilize necessary resources. Though 4.1% may not be the actual fiscal deficit, it may be little more than that. I assure you that at least there is some earnestness on the part of the present minister to do what he has to do in order to limit the fiscal deficit.
Professor Paranjape, can we have your point?
I am not very optimistic of 4.1%. I think it will be missed by a very large amount. For the simple reason that all the revenue, philosophically, Arun Jaitley has said that I am going towards the revenue maximization path rather than expenditure curtailment path. So if that's your path, and many of these revenue enhancement mechanisms are not likely to kick in immediately. Second, much of the expenditure is a committed expenditure, interest payment on past borrowings, the entire big fat government machinery and subsidies. So there is very little space available for expenditure management. So even if the expenditure commission comes in, it submits its report. So I don't think 2014-15 presents any space for the finance minister for actualization of all the proposals into reality so that revenue maximization starts kicking in. I am quite surprised that he has actually done a cut-paste job. 2014-15, the budget expenditure numbers presented by Chidambaram are actually done as a cut-paste mechanism. With very little changes, wherever some new Deen Dayal proposal and Ganga Mate proposal, all these new proposals are kicked in, their numbers are changed. Otherwise, it's actually identical to Chidambaram numbers. And Arun Jaitley even made that statement saying that yes, I didn't find it necessary to really dig into every number and find out reasons of change. So I have gone ahead with those numbers and I am making an attempt to meet those numbers. I don't think that's going to be possible. Because the whole budget has not been discussed de novo. Means all the numbers are not thought of new. Whatever February numbers are there, they are simply copied with very few changes. So 4.1% is also Chidambaram number. GDP number is also the same, with some last couple of decimals getting changed. So I am quite aghast, actually speaking, that the same thing is done, and now he is saying that it's a challenge. So it's a challenge, but my perception is that it's not going to be met. It's more likely to be something close to what he actually delivered in 4.5 or even more. And if growth shrinks further, the number will worsen further because denominator will grow at a lower pace.
Professor Paranjape talks about revenue maximization in realizing high growth, but are we expecting a revenue maximization by 145%? Is that number real? Ganesh sir, if you can please elaborate on that.
Yeah, regarding the revenue receipts, maybe taxation, indirect taxes, there is no problem in that. Because based on the past experience, every year there has been almost 25% increase in the tax collection. So this year also it will go. Regarding that maintenance of the deficit, whatever 4.1, 4.2, whatever it may be, finally after the month of December, the government gets aware of that. So finally, for the January, February, March, 3 months, so they go on playing with that numbers. The funds will not be released, your income tax refund will not be released, or the planned expenditure will be stopped. So at the end of the month, anyhow, they can maintain that level. So this is how the system works.
Yeah, so finally you will go to expenditure cut.
Yes.
But if you want to follow the path of revenue and not expenditure, yeah, if expenditure controls are kicked in, then perhaps. But 4.1 simply looks not doable. Not doable. In fact, the interest payment number itself is wrong in my opinion. 1450. If you just look at the base of the government borrowing now, and then borrowing will be of the order of 5 lakh crore, and add some treasury bill numbers, and you can do the calculation. It's not very tricky one. So there are many optimistic assumptions in this. That certain low interest sources of borrowings from abroad will be made available. Inflation will be tamed and therefore interest rates will be brought down. So therefore average cost of government borrowing will come down from 8.1% to 7.8%. All these assumptions are implicit when you look at these interest calculations. I don't think they are going to work.
So my next question is on retrospective tax. We have discussed about it. But Ganesh sir, if you can please elaborate. Couldn't Finance Minister project India as a tax-friendly nation by waiving of retrospective, the clause of retrospective tax? And I have a supplementary to that. In India, we know the tax-paying population is very low. It's close to 1%. And in last year, the Finance Ministry took an exercise to identify people who are not paying taxes, and the ministry found out there are around 23 lakh individuals who are earning more than 10 lakh a year, but not filing the returns. So, what is the mechanism in the body to actually include more people in tax-paying regime, and not strictify or find out people who are already paying taxes and maybe higher taxes on them?
We have two questions. One first regarding the retrospective amendments. That has been a feature of Chidambaram's budget. Every year there would have been certain retrospective amendments just to reverse the court decisions. And in India, mainly regarding the Supreme Court, the decision what they give, it's more on the the social impact. They don't go exactly by the principle behind that amendment. I think example the Vodafone case. So that was the major issue regarding retrospective amendment. The law was amended with retrospective from 1956 itself, saying that if you are having any foreign assets, Indian assets controlled by a foreign company, that would have been taxable. This concept is present everywhere, all over. Wherever the country you go, that system is present there. But here, we are in an evolving process. The whole concept of taxation is evolving process. We make certain mistakes, we rectify it. So in that process, in certain things we need retrospective amendment. So though the Vodafone case as a public image, it has become a big issue. But if you speak to any the tax advocate, he says that what the government has made is correct. Because the transaction is liable to tax. If the same transaction was done in UK or in USA, it would have attracted to the tax. But here, just by interpreting the law, it was the new situation. Such situation was not there earlier. So they took the advantage of not paying the tax, and now they are fighting it. It went finally to the Supreme Court, and there also Harish Salve could argument not on the principles of the taxation. His argument was more on convincing the judge, saying that if the benefit is not given to Vodafone, then the foreign investor will not come to India. This is the secondary thing. So that is a retrospective amendment. Wherever the law assumes that this transaction has to be taxed, then it has to be taxed. See, whatever the things we think in mind, so there is a limitation for words. Whatever we think, it can't be given in writing. The law assumes certain thing. The rule makers or the taxmen, they assume certain thing, and they think that this has to be taxed. This transaction has to be taxed. But the exact, that logic could not be implemented in writing. In such cases, whenever the SSE takes an other view, in such cases to rectify those things, those mistakes, then the retrospective amendment is an essential thing.
So regarding the mechanism, you can educate us on the mechanism of how...
Regarding the mechanism of increasing the tax base, so that is the actual situation. The fact says that there are only 50,000 or 60,000 people paying income tax on the income was more than 1 crore or 5 crore, whatever it is. It is the factual thing. See, today nobody wants to pay low taxes, so it is totally unavoidable. See, you can't do it as a salaried person. Can you do anything? The Form 60 is given to you, while giving you the salary, you are given the exact deduction. As a practicing chartered accountant, even I am also, for whatever the fees I get, I am subjected to TDS. My income is declared there, so there is no much scope for that. The present system is like that. So unless you bring the entire economy to a to certain standards, you can't expect that everybody should pay taxes. All the entire 100 crore people should pay the taxes. It's totally impossible. So, but the whole taxation system is an evolution. The evolution is going on. It may take certain time.
Professor Paranjape, you can please add.
Yeah, I'm just going to read that thing. Okay, I think I remember it. Saying that while protecting the sovereign right of the government to invoke retrospective taxes, we want to say that henceforth we will do it with caution. The point that he was mentioning, they have checked with the lawyers and Supreme Court that it is very much within the rights of the Parliament to pass retrospective legislation. He said that, can I say that henceforth we will never do so? You can't make such a commitment because instances may arise when you may have to do so. So all that he is saying that we will do it with caution, with great care. And wherever required, we will have some kind of a mechanism. That mechanism is a little funny mechanism. CBDT reference and all that. But at least there is something that he can appeal later on, which means it is not the final word. Maybe some more rounds of discussion can happen. But the critical thing is you cannot give a carte blanche to some people saying that we will never do this. So, as he was rightly pointing out Harish Salve's argument, you can't say that our country will go down in the eyes of FIIs. Okay, so be it. Yeah. India went down in the eyes of, United States went down in the eyes of India when this Cobra Gade affair happened. Did America say that, oh, Indians are feeling too bad about this and therefore let's change the law? That doesn't happen. So there are a couple of things that a nation must look at. And if it is believed that retrospective amendments may be required, sure, we will do that. But enough comfort is given saying that there would be checks and balances in the system before a retrospective amendment is introduced. So it is very nice for people to say, why couldn't we repeal the act? Repealing acts is not such a trivial event.
Parliament has to approve again.
Yeah, but there are issues, and I think the issues are very properly spelled out in the budget speech. Regarding increasing the tax base or number of people who pay tax. That's pathetic, but that's how the system really works. Yeah, I think some sort of a danda system will have to be brought into the picture. Otherwise, it's really ridiculous that number of people who are declaring income of rupees 1 crore or more is really very few. And then you see every now and then a press release from Mercedes India saying that on one single day 125 Mercedes Benz, each valued at 32 lakhs, were sold. How do you put these two things together? So there is rampant tax avoidance, tax evasion, whatever you will call, is happening. Tax base can be increased if there is a.
It's exactly.
Yeah, I think that there is. Looks like there is a will here. I don't know how far it is practical to bring in people in the tax net saying that, hey, you have not paid tax, why don't you file return? That's the only thing you can do. Otherwise, you can't police like these videos. You can't make police 100 crore people. Yeah, that's not possible.
If you would like to add something.
No, I was going through what he has declared. See, some very minor and ineffective statements are made. Say, in furtherance of the effort to broaden the tax base, certain exemptions are being withdrawn, including those extended to services by air-conditioned contract carriages and technical testing of newly developed drugs on human participants. I think all these will not help you much. All these will not help you much. As he wants to impress, that he wants to do something, let him do. So next time when you meet here for discussion, let us see.
So my next question. In this budget presentation, we are happy that no subsidies, significant subsidies have been increased. But we are also sad that no significant subsidy cuts have been made. Because the kind of mandate that BJP government got this time, there were provisions where BJP government could go ahead and cut subsidies to enhance and to give boost to the economy, to strengthen the economy. So to fund this bridge, to fund this gap between fiscal and current account deficits, if there is a subsidy cut rate of 4 to 5%, how do you think the dynamics would change and how important is it?
My dear friend, one thing which one has to consider is subsidies per se are not bad. Subsidies are being criticized because these subsidies don't reach the persons whom they should reach. It is a governance issue in economy. It is a governance issue. Today I think,
Just keep it.
perhaps I don't require a mic. Anyway, thank you. So, that is one, there are many dimensions of the issue of subsidies. Employment guarantee scheme. Auditors know how public money is being misused. You can't withdraw the scheme so easily. There are many other implications. Therefore, please don't think that I am holding any brief for you. Okay? The question of subsidies needs a lot of debate. If higher education is not subsidized at all, I think many young Indians will not receive higher education. You agree? If subsidies are not given at all, as he has mentioned in his present budget, there is still widespread poverty, and poor people need to be helped.
I think this will resonate with TAPMI students.
Yeah. Therefore, my point is this. There are two issues. Subsidies per se are not bad. Governance issue is more important. Perhaps the present commission which is proposing, Expenditure Reform Commission, may look into it.
So I'm saying this because Indians have a saving rate of 30% on an average. So 4 to 5% subsidy, how much would it affect the base?
Yes, subsidies to GDP ratio is 2.3%.
2.3%.
Okay. And so let's say that all subsidies are zero. then also fiscal deficit to GDP will be down from 4.5 to 2.3. I think Dr. Joshi has put a very valid point. The manner in which subsidies are implemented results into substantial leakage.
Yeah.
So there are some estimates which are saying that you just stop the leakage and perhaps you can do with 1.5% of GDP as subsidy. And at that level, I don't think it's going to be completely unmanageable. Globally also, there are a large number of countries giving far more subsidies than what India gives.
American agriculture is highly subsidized. Yeah, you're right.
Okay, so just because we are an emerging country and we are running fiscal deficit, doesn't mean that we shouldn't have subsidies. So, I don't think subsidy is such a matter of big debate, but somehow in the public discourse of budget, subsidies are made out as a big thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Therefore, all of us tend to kind of look at subsidies with suspicion. But administration of subsidies, if you just stop the leakage in PDS, stop the leakage in MG and REGA, stop the leakage in many of the schemes, subsidy burden will come down. And then it could be manageable.
Yeah. And many of our administrative costs can be reduced with government reforms. If you think that subsidy cannot be properly administered and therefore they should be withdrawn, I tell you, my dear friends, many other things are also cannot be administered, they all should be withdrawn. We have come to that stage. So governance reforms are needed even in respect of subsidies.
Ganesh,
You would like to add something? I'm not an expert in subsidy.
sir,
But you will have a view.
Generally, you and I have the same doubt.
But you have audited, I think, employment guarantee schemes.
So my next question is regarding GST. As we know, GST is a highly anticipated and welcome reform by the corporates. But there have been altercations between the union government and the central government regarding two issues mainly. One is the CST compensation that the state government are demanding, and then there are two provisions, two exemptions actually, on the fuel and on the petroleum, and other on the sales tax, service tax, I'm sorry. So, Dr. Joshi, you being member of Planning Commission of the state, can you please clarify how does this process go? Why is there an altercation between the two governments?
I think one thing I tell you, I was a member
Yes.
when the earlier government was there. With the BJP government coming to a close, the planning board was dissolved. Therefore, that is the answer to your question. And secondly, these are the issues which require a lot of debate. GST, direct taxes board, etc. So it has been there since nearly a decade. We have been hearing about it. Here also he said toward the end of this year, perhaps that kind of change may be introduced. He is also not very sure. There is no commitment. It is a criticism against him. A very vague statement being made in a budget speech. Therefore, something which requires a lot of scrutiny, GST, direct tax code, I think you agree with me. Then it requires a lot of debate. See, I can give one instance as an example, how miserably this country has failed. I have detailed here, time may demonstrate. When the Fiscal Responsibility Act, FRDM Act was mooted by the earlier NDA government, there were strict provisions. Unfortunately, earlier NDA government could not pass the act. UPA government came and passed the act. Many provisions were diluted. The result, finance ministers have been able to manage with increased fiscal deficit through law. Law has permitted it. The whole act bill was diluted by UPA government. I have written information here. You must have already come to know. I think I am answering your question on the fiscal deficit also in a different way, by way of adding to what you want from me. Economic survey, which was presented a day earlier, that the new act should be passed. FRBM Act, we require new act. Arun Jaitley has also agreed that Many improvements are needed in the FRBM. Country is making experiments.
Professor Paranjape, you being heading a company, how do you look at this?
I am in 100% agreement with Dr. Joshi. FRBM Act needs to be drafted in a way where Ministry of Finance is held accountable for a number and they don't deliver, there are some penalties associated. There have to be adverse consequences to not meeting financial numbers. Presently, that's not the case. So let's hope that
Let us hope. See, I give you one more example, Professor, in continuation of what you said. See how finance ministers tried to help themselves by cheating the whole country. In the early 80s, finance minister, Mukherjee was the finance minister. As a politician, sometimes he has succeeded. As finance minister, he has always failed. You know what he said? Professor Brahmananda raised a very serious criticism against that. Converting, transferring funds from the capital account to the current account in order to meet the deficit temporarily, he started. Professor Brahmananda raised a serious objection. He said it is a very, very dangerous fiscal practice. You shouldn't do that. He didn't care. Some 2 years back, in fact, in one of the discussions held by chartered accountants in Mangalore, I pointed out, I read the provision, it appeared in the supplement of the Economic Times. What he did illegally in the early 1980s, he tried to legalize it by passing a law. So, some of our finance ministers are dangerously intelligent. Dangerously intelligent. See, one intelligent statement I can just give how Arun Jaitley has also, I think, sir, he is also sufficiently intelligent to deceive the people. See,
that's why he became finance minister.
Maybe. See, how you look at his intelligence. Little more intelligent than even his predecessor in this respect. I now turn to budgetary allocations. While announcing the allocations, I want to reiterate my government's firm commitment to strengthen the federal structure of the country and our resolve to work closely with the state governments for the larger good of the people. Well, burden is being passed to the shoulders of the state governments in an intelligent way. He doesn't state it in an open way, but in a silent way, he is sowing the seeds of danger. You agree? This is how he becomes intelligent.
He is respecting the federal system.
Yeah, I know. See how another, sir, this is again interesting. I didn't say this, now I can say, which is directly related to the topic on which I have addressed you. Having pointed out that the manufacturing sector and infrastructure deserve a lot of support, there is one statement which is very, very fascinating for him. The task before me today is very challenging because we need to revive growth, particularly in manufacturing and infrastructure, to raise adequate resources for our development needs. If you read it, it appears to me that he expects more from manufacturing and infrastructure than what he gives in terms of budget. So these are all the ways in which, well, finance ministers can escape, but the country cannot escape very far.
We have time to take audience questions.
We have take a couple of questions.
I'll move on to audience now.
Sure.
If anyone has questions from the audience, sure, sir.
Hijack your agenda, but I just thank the Finance Forum for this wonderful session this evening and the speakers, of course. I'm sorry I walked in late. I literally just landed from Mumbai and so 15 minutes late. My question is quite simple, and maybe Avinash, you would want to take this one.
Right.
I think we are really fixated about this fiscal deficit and fiscal prudence. Blind Freddy would tell anybody that India needs a lot of education, investments need to be done. My concern is, why are we not less forgiving on a government that has 6.5% fiscal deficit? And so what, it's not the end of the world. If it's for a little bit longer, if we sustain this kind of rate, what will happen? I'm saying that it's
Brilliant. I am personally not against fiscal deficit. Okay? In fact, there is a very long-standing kind of dictum in macroeconomics that you can run up as much deficit as you want, which you can finance comfortably. Right. So now the question comes of financing. We seem to have some sort of a block